Hi everyone, this is Alicia. I'm going to be doing my presentation on Chapter 9, applying the personalization and embodiment principles. So I'm going to have graphs and figures and examples from our book, E-Learning and the Science of Instruction by Clark and Mayer. Let's get started. The two main principles covered in this chapter are personalization and embodiment. Personalization principle uses conversational style, polite wording, human voice, and virtual coaches. This is using terms like you, I, ours, and we. It also is providing polite directions. An example of this would be utilizing please when you instruct the learner with step-by-step processes. This really is trying to resemble a normal conversation during the learning module. Embodiment principle uses effective on-screen coaches to promote learning. This is using a pedagogical agent or virtual coach that is lifelike with realistic movements and human voice. This graph shows how the presence or absence of social cues affects learning. When a learning module doesn't have a conversational style, but uses formal wording, this would be considered lack of social cues. Formal wording does not have any friendly or polite terminology or phrases. As you can see, there are no social responses or an increase in cognitive processing. Lack of social cues can be referred to as an information delivery, because the instructor's job is to present the information and the learner's job is to acquire that information, which when you think about it, it probably isn't really consistent with how our minds really work. Ideally, the instructor should not only present information, but also prime the appropriate cognitive processing in the learner. Social cues with the use of conversational style. This would be if you used friendly and polite terminology as well as incorporated second-person narration. So you as the narrator would be in a conversation with the learner. As you can see, with social cues being present, it activates social response and cognitive processing and increases the quality of learning outcomes. Research has shown learners will work harder to understand the material if they feel they are in a conversation. Here is an example of conversational and formal so you understand the difference. Conversational example would be, we will be discussing different breeds and what causes you to have allergies to them. Your mission is to learn what type of dogs are best suited for you. I will be guiding you by giving out some hints throughout the course. A formal example would be, the goal is to learn what type of dogs are best suited for people with allergies. Some hints are provided throughout the module. The conversational form of communicating through e-learning will actually encourage learners to interact with the computer, similarly to how they would interact if they were talking to you or me. In 5 different experimental studies, Marino and Mayer compared 2 versions of an educational game, one with a conversational style and one with a formal style. The results is students learned better when they talked directly to the computer in a conversational style. You want to be careful, though, not to make it too personal. The negative example they provide in the book is, wow, hi dude, I'm here to talk to you all about blank, so hang on to your hat and here we go. A, this is overly cheesy. And B, it will definitely distract your learner from taking the lesson seriously. And you don't want either of those. Research shows that people are sensitive to the politeness tone of feedback statements, especially for learners unfamiliar with the content. According to Brown and Levinson's politeness theory, using the polite version of directions actually saves face with the learner, allowing the learner to work cooperatively with the agent. However, just be careful because the reverse trend was found for learners who are more experienced on the subject matter. So you really want to know your audience prior to creating the e-learning module. That way, you can be polite for beginners and more direct for experienced learners. There are two choices out there for voice narration, human versus robot. After several studies, it can be determined that people learn better from narration with a human voice than a machine voice. Under the right circumstances, people treat computers like real people. Thus, using a human voice is important. We want our learners to treat the module like a real conversation, so they try harder to understand what's being taught. Preliminary studies have shown that pedagogical agents do actually improve student learning, so it would be advantageous if you use them in your e-learning modules. Your virtual assistants can be cartoon-like characters, a talking head video, or a virtual reality avatar. However, it's important to use a human voice rather than a generated computer voice. If the avatar doesn't act like a human, it can be distracting to the learners. For preliminary research, it appears it doesn't matter if you use a cartoon or real-life looking agent for voice narration, as long as they have human gestures. Your on-screen agent should really be voice narrated rather than a written narration if possible. The modality effect applies to on-screen agents. It's important to not overwhelm the learner with having print screen text, as well as graphics or charts for them to read. It's important to always use pictures that relate and make sense for each slide. The pictures should not be there for entertainment or comedic relief. In this slide, a perfect tweak would be taking advantage of the fact that you have a picture of a professor and you can actually take that stagnant picture and have him explain the instructions or just the slide in a conversational style. When utilizing a conversational style to present information through an on-screen agent or avatar, this is actually serving as multiple purpose benefit. The learner won't be overwhelmed, and it actually cultivates deeper learning through the cognitive theory. And this concludes my presentation on Chapter 9, Applying the Personalization and Embodiment Principles. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to our Blackboard discussion on this chapter.